200 invitations, emblazoned with my sacred address, was the final devastating blow. They had audacity, but I had 4 decades of bottled fury and a signed contract for retribution. I am Evelyn Reed, and for 40 years, my life was measured in centimeters of fabric, shades of beige, and the hollow ring of office telephones. I spent my prime designing sanctuaries for others, dreaming only of one for myself. That dream crystallized 5 years ago in the form of the Sapphire Lavender Farm, an 82-acre slice of heaven nestled in the rolling hills of Sonoma, California. This land, with its whispery purple rose and the scent of quiet dignity, was not just property. It was my soul made visible. Every flower, every fence post was bought with pennies squeezed from 4 decades of relentless, often thankless labor as an interior designer, yet, to my son, Jeremy, and his fiancée, Tiffany, the farm was merely a magnificent backdrop, a sprawling, conveniently managed and free venue for their elaborate, society-page wedding. I was not the esteemed owner, the weary matriarch who bought her freedom at last. No, in their eyes, I was simply the ever-present, compliant farm manager, or more accurately, the perpetually exhausted housekeeper. The discovery was less a moment of realization and more an earthquake. It wasn't Jeremy who told me. It wasn't Tiffany, whose icy politeness had always been a calculated form of control. It was the frantic, overly cheerful voice of a stranger, a florist named Daisy, who called on a Tuesday morning, "Mrs. Reed, I am finalizing the floral arrangements for the Bridgerton theme. Just confirming that we are installing the 3-tier cascading rose arch under the majestic sycamore tree, ready for Saturday's 5 p.m. ceremony." My hand gripping the antique porcelain teacup began to tremble. Saturday. This Saturday. The sycamore tree, the very one I had planted with my late husband 20 years ago, was where I planned to scatter his ashes next month. "Daisy," I said, the name tasting like ash on my tongue. "I'm afraid there must be a grave mistake. There is no wedding scheduled here this Saturday. I haven't authorized any event." A beat of professional awkwardness followed. "Oh dear. I'm so sorry, but I have the official invitation right here. It clearly states the Reed Monroe wedding reception at the Sapphire Lavender Farm, 5 p.m. She read out the address, my address, with the bright, damning clarity of a police report. That was the moment the 4 decades of silent servitude curdled into white-hot explosive rage. It wasn't just the wedding. It was the 200 invitations, 200 pieces of engraved cardstock sent out across the country, committing my life, my space, my sanctuary, without a single word of consultation. They hadn't just used my farm. They had stolen my right to exist within it. I immediately called Jeremy. He answered with the clipped, impatient tone of a man whose time is too valuable for his own mother. "Mom, I'm in a meeting." "Is this about the lawnmower again?" "It's about the wedding, Jeremy." I articulated each syllable like a shard of glass. "The wedding you planned on my property without my permission. The wedding you are having this Saturday." There was a pause, a fleeting flicker of guilt perhaps, quickly smothered by entitlement. "Oh, that. I meant to tell you." Tiffany handled the invites. "It was just easier to use the farm." "It's perfect. You can help the caterers get set up, and you know where all the good linens are, right?" My breath hitched. Help the caterers. Linens. After 40 years, my highest value to them was still domestic utility. "Jeremy," I said, standing up, pacing toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lavender field, "you have committed my entire property, my home, to an event for 200 people, displacing me and all my weekend plans. And you thought it was a small enough detail to forget to mention? Mom, you're being dramatic. You never use the main lawn anyway. We'll pay you back later. Just relax. Everything is handled. Tiffany wants you to make your famous artichoke dip for the rehearsal dinner on Friday, please." Artichoke dip. The small, insignificant chore he tossed my way to mask the monumental disrespect. I hung up. My body shook, but my mind had achieved the icy, tactical calm of a military general. I was done being the silent martyr. The era of the compliant mother was over. It was time for Evelyn Reed, the CEO of her own dignity, to take control. I opened my laptop and called Henry Maxwell at Aegis Corporate Events, the best, most ruthless corporate event planner on the West Coast. Mr. Maxwell, I stated, my voice smooth and low. My name is Evelyn Reed. I have a stunning 82-acre property, the Sapphire Lavender Farm. I need to book it for a last-minute high-stakes international summit. This Saturday, I need the main lawn, the dining terrace, and absolute privacy until 6 p.m. I will pay $7,500, cash, and I require the contract signed and returned by the end of the day. Henry Maxwell, clearly stunned by the sudden massive cash offer and the aggressive timing, simply said, Mrs. Reed, you have my attention. You have a deal. Send the wire. Consider your property locked down. The contract arrived electronically an hour later. I signed it. I paid it. When Jeremy called back, frantic and apologetic, because the lighting company had also called him confused, I was sitting on my porch, sipping iced tea. Mom, what did you tell the lighting guy? He said the site is now double booked. We are panicking. I looked out at the tranquil purple fields, smelling the clean, sharp scent of lavender and freedom. Oh, that's right, Jeremy. I rented my farm. I signed a fully paid contract with Aegis Corporate Events. They have exclusive rights to the main lawn and the terrace until 6 p.m. this Saturday. Your wedding will continue exactly as planned, Jeremy. Just not here, or at least not yet. This property has an owner, and her word is bond. The silence on the other end was pure, unadulterated shock. It was the sweetest sound I had heard in 5 years. The lesson had begun. The Sapphire Dream was no longer a free service. It was a sovereign territory. The ensuing 72 hours before the wedding day were a whirlwind of escalating tension, high drama, and silent warfare. Jeremy and Tiffany were thrown into a vortex of panic, their carefully curated social media persona of effortless elegance crumbling faster than a sandcastle in the tide. I, meanwhile, maintained the serene, unassailable calm of a woman who had just won the first major battle in a decades-long conflict. Jeremy initially tried the aggression route. He drove over Wednesday morning, his face contorted with fury and disbelief. You can't do this, Mom. It's sabotage. We'll lose the deposits. 200 people are flying in. You're humiliating us. I met him on the porch, not in my usual gardening clothes, but in a crisp linen suit, my posture ramrod straight. I am doing this, Jeremy. The contract is signed. The money is paid. The question you should be asking yourself is, why did you think it was acceptable to commit a multi-million-dollar property, which is not yours, to a high-profile event without asking the owner? Because you're my mother. Mothers don't charge their sons rent. Mothers help! He spat the word help as if it were a weakness. And owners don't allow their property to be taken for granted, I countered, my voice low and steady. You want to discuss what mothers do? Mothers teach respect. Mothers teach consequences. You're learning now, Jeremy. This is your first lesson. He stormed off, screeching his luxury sedan down my gravel driveway. But I knew the aggression was empty. He was backed into a corner. Tiffany predictably resorted to emotional manipulation, calling me later that day, her voice thick with fake tears. Evelyn, darling, please, you have to cancel Henry. Think of my parents. They flew in from Paris. They think you're so generous. They'll be devastated. It's a misunderstanding of dates, really. No, Tiffany. It was no misunderstanding. It was a calculated assumption of my compliance. Henry Maxwell has a signed contract. I have no family conflict with him. He is a professional client, and I honor my word. The look of shock on her face, even through the phone line, was immensely satisfying. She wasn't used to anyone saying no. Friday arrived with the precision of a military operation. Henry Maxwell's team, sleek and professional in their black uniforms, descended upon the farm. They set up state-of-the-art multimedia screens on the main lawn where the wedding altar was supposed to be. They installed high-end minimalist furniture on the dining terrace where Tiffany had envisioned her bridal table. The air, usually smelling of sweet lavender, was now scented with ambition and polished leather. I watched from my porch, an invisible barrier separating me from the activity. The corporate executives arriving were precise, focused, and utterly oblivious to the domestic drama simmering just beyond their professional bubble. They respected the space, following the rules laid out in the contract: no smoking near the lavender, use designated parking only, and absolute silence during presentation times. The contrast between their professionalism and my family's staggering entitlement was a stark, brutal revelation. Saturday dawned, the day of the supposed wedding. I woke up at 5 a.m. and went about my routine, making a single cup of tea. The corporate event was already in full swing by 8 a.m., a quiet hum of high-stakes networking and strategic planning. Then, the first wedding guests began to arrive. A pristine white stretch limo, clearly hired by Tiffany's wealthy family, pulled up the driveway, followed by a handful of expensive SUVs. The first to step out were Tiffany's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Monroe, elegant and impeccably dressed, looking for the pre-ceremony champagne. Mr. Monroe, wearing a custom-tailored Italian suit, stopped dead when he saw the massive Aegis corporate events banner draped across the barn entrance. He looked confused, then indignant. Mrs. Monroe, seeing the executives in business attire milling near the terrace, gasped dramatically, adjusting her oversized hat. "What on earth, George? Is this some sort of joke?" Jeremy and Tiffany arrived shortly after, dressed in their immaculate, costly wedding attire. Jeremy pale with stress, and Tiffany, her stunning satin gown already looking too pristine for the unfolding disaster. The sight of the corporate event in full, successful operation hit them like a physical blow. Tiffany shrieked, a high-pitched sound of pure despair. "No, this is impossible. We booked this." She immediately ran toward the main lawn, her beautiful train dragging across the gravel, heading straight for Henry Maxwell, who was calmly supervising a technical check. Henry, a man of 50-something with the unflappable demeanor of a seasoned diplomat, saw the approaching storm. He met Tiffany with a cool, polite smile. "May I help you, madam?" "Help me?" Tiffany cried, her voice cracking. "This is our wedding. Who are these people? You must stop this immediately." Henry turned to look at me, standing impassively on my porch. "I apologize, madam, but this property is currently rented under a binding contract to Aegis Corporate Events until 6 p.m. You must consult with the property owner, Mrs. Reed, regarding any conflicting arrangements." Tiffany's face turned scarlet as she realized she had to appeal to the very person she had tried to circumvent. Jeremy, meanwhile, was paralyzed, staring at me with a mixture of disbelief and, for the first time, genuine fear. He was seeing his mother not as his domestic servant, but as the ruthless, undeniable owner. The tables had turned and the shock wave was palpable. This was the moment of reckoning, the sight of the executives, focused, quiet, and achieving their professional goals, while Tiffany crumpled in tears on the manicured lawn, was a profound and deeply satisfying contrast. Jeremy finally found his voice, not in anger, but in a defeated whisper directed at me. "Mom, what about the guests? They're going to start arriving. What are we going to tell the 200 people who traveled thousands of miles for this?" I descended the 3 wooden steps of the porch, the rhythmic tap of my leather mules on the aged wood sounding like a judge's gavel. I stood just 3 feet from them, close enough for them to see the resolve in my 68-year-old eyes. "You will tell them the truth, Jeremy. You will tell them that you organized a wedding on private property without consulting the owner. You will tell them that your lack of respect created this situation, not me." At that precise, devastating moment, the main gate opened, and a long stream of vehicles began winding up the driveway. The true chaotic wave of guests had begun. Families piled out of cars, dressed in their finest attire. Children, confused, chased each other across the parking lot. An elderly aunt, frail and dressed in a silk gown, peered around, bewildered. The wedding crowd was multiplying exponentially, creating a confusing, angry mob at the periphery of the tranquil corporate summit. Tiffany, her beautiful white gown now dragging in the dirt, rushed from group to group, babbling incomprehensible excuses. "It's a terrible mix-up. A scheduling error with the farm manager. We're trying to fix it. Each frantic explanation only amplified the sense of disaster. Jeremy was glued to his cell phone, his elegant composure completely shattered. He looked like a caged lion pacing furiously. "I need a venue for 200 people now. I don't care about the cost. It's a major family emergency." But it was a Saturday in peak season, and every grand ballroom, every private estate, was already booked solid. There was no contingency for 200 guests, complete with catering, music, and a full ceremony setup on 4 hours' notice. The reality of their colossal mistake was sinking in with brutal clarity. I remained on my porch, a privileged, serene spectator in the eye of this hurricane of entitlement. The Aegis executives continued their presentations, a perfect tableau of professional detachment. From time to time, a wedding guest, usually a distant relative, would approach me, recognizing me as the older woman standing calmly amidst the chaos. "Excuse me?" "Ma'am," a woman in a bright yellow fascinator asked timidly, "do you know where the altar has been moved to? Is there a tent?" I gave her the most polite, utterly detached smile I could muster. "I am so sorry, but I wouldn't know. I am merely the owner of the farm, and today it is fully rented for a corporate event. You would have to ask the bride and groom." The look on her face was a masterpiece of bewildered confusion. She couldn't reconcile the idea of the groom's mother being so utterly disconnected from her own son's wedding, or the impossibility of two simultaneous, mutually exclusive events on the same sacred day. This was exactly the confusion I had intended. The public acknowledgement of their disrespect was unfolding perfectly. Then, at 3:30 in the afternoon, Father Michael arrived. He was a man in his late 60s, with the infinite patience and weariness of a spiritual counselor who has seen every iteration of human folly and family drama. He stepped out of his modest sedan, took in the scene, the tear-stained bride, the frantic groom, the corporate executives, and the confused crowd, and walked straight toward Jeremy. "Son, please explain to me what in the name of God is transpiring here," Father Michael asked, his hand resting gently on Jeremy's shoulder. Jeremy, reduced to the Catholic schoolboy who dared not lie in confession, broke down completely. "Father, my mother, she rented the farm for another event. We didn't ask her if we could use it. Tiffany just sent the invitations." Father Michael's wise, compassionate eyes scanned the property, then settled on me. He walked slowly toward the porch and climbed the steps, seating himself in the rocker next to mine. "Evelyn, I'm Father Michael. May we talk for a moment?" "Of course, Father." I admired his approach. He wasn't accusatory or demanding. He sought understanding, not surrender. "Tell me your side, my dear," he said with the quiet authority of a seasoned confessor. I told him everything. The 40 years of work, the 5 years of being treated like a live-in housekeeper, the unauthorized parties, the wedding planned behind my back, the 200 invitations committing my home without my knowledge. I laid out the truth with the sharp, clean honesty owed to a man of the cloth. Father Michael listened in absolute silence, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he looked out at the executives enjoying their catered lunch, and then at the confused, desperate wedding crowd. "I understand your pain, Evelyn," he finally said, "and I understand that you feel grossly disrespected. But there are 200 innocent people who came here with the deepest desire to celebrate your son's love." "Father," I replied, my voice steady, "I did not create this situation. I only defended my ownership. My property. I know, my dear. And you have every right to protect what is yours. But now, we must find a way to resolve this in the most compassionate way possible." His words, steeped in morality, posed the ultimate dilemma, the balance between justice and mercy. "What do you suggest, Father?" I asked, intrigued. I respected his wisdom, but I was loath to accept any solution that instantly bailed out Jeremy and Tiffany from the gaping hole of their own creation. Father Michael considered the situation. "The corporate event is legally secured until 6 p.m. We cannot, in good conscience, interrupt that contract. But perhaps, just perhaps, we could utilize the front lawn, away from the main event, for a very brief, intimate ceremony with only the immediate family. Then they could find a respectable restaurant in town for the reception. It was objectively a reasonable, compassionate compromise. But the cost was too high for my long-term strategy. Accepting it would mean instantly rescuing Jeremy and Tiffany, confirming their belief that no matter how egregious their mistakes, their doting mother would always rush in to clean up the mess. It would teach them nothing. "Father," I said, looking him directly in his knowing eyes, "for 5 years I have rescued my son from the consequences of his entitlement. I've scrubbed wine stains from my carpet after their unauthorized parties. I've cooked for strangers who never knew my name. I've allowed them to treat this house as their private club. Every time I rescue him, Jeremy learns that he can operate without boundaries, because Mom will always fix it." Father Michael nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. He understood the moral architecture of my dilemma perfectly. "And what, then, do you believe needs to happen now, Evelyn? What is the necessary consequence? My son and his fiancée need to learn that decisions have a tangible, immediate cost. That you cannot use someone else's property, not even your mother's, without explicit permission and respect." Just then, Tiffany came running toward the porch. Her expensive gown was now smeared with dirt, her carefully applied makeup streaked by tears. She looked less like a princess and more like a desperate, cornered child. "Father Michael! Thank heavens you're here. Please help us! Evelyn has to understand that this is our special day," she pleaded, sinking to her knees in a dramatic satin puddle on the porch. The priest regarded her with a mixture of compassion and sternness. "Tiffany, my dear, before we discuss special days, we must address the fundamental issues of respect and consideration. It is true, is it not, that you planned this entire wedding without consulting Mrs. Reed, the owner of this property?" Tiffany froze, her mouth agape. The truth was an unassailable fortress, and she knew it. "But we thought she was family. We didn't think it was necessary to ask." "You didn't think it was necessary to ask the owner if you could commit her property to an event for 200 people? Father Michael repeated gently, his patience disarming her aggressive defense. "But we've always used the farm for our celebrations," Tiffany wailed. "There's never been a problem before." "And that, my dear, is precisely the problem," the priest stated simply. "The absence of conflict does not signify the presence of respect." Watching Tiffany, the arrogant young woman who had relegated me to the role of servant, finally confront the damning truth in front of a man of God, was a profound moment of validation. Someone else finally saw the invisible wound I had carried for 5 years. But the lesson was not yet complete. Father Michael spent the next hour in mediation, a spiritual referee in the strangest domestic standoff imaginable. While we debated, an interesting development occurred. The corporate executives, noticing the frantic, tear-soaked bride and the huge, confused crowd, began to shift uncomfortably. Mr. Henry Maxwell, the event planner, approached the porch discreetly. "Mrs. Reed, my deepest apologies for the interruption. My clients are expressing significant concern. They see the family situation and feel genuinely terrible occupying the space on such an important, albeit confusing day. They are asking if they can assist." I felt a faint prick of shame. These sophisticated strangers were showing more consideration and empathy for my family's crisis than my own son and daughter-in-law had shown toward me in half a decade. "That is remarkably kind of your clients, Mr. Maxwell," I replied. "But you have a fully paid, legally binding event. You should not concern yourselves with our family matters. If you change your mind—" "Mrs. Reed," he offered, "we will conclude our main presentations by 4:30 p.m., and our networking session will clear out by 6 p.m. sharp. After that, the property is entirely yours." 6 p.m. That meant a late candlelit ceremony was possible. Tiffany's eyes, brimming with desperate hope, immediately latched onto the idea. "Did you hear that, Evelyn? We could have a sunset wedding. It would be so romantic," she cried out. "Tiffany," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "the problem is not the clock. The problem is that you never once asked for permission to use my home." Jeremy then approached. He didn't have the fury of earlier. Instead, his expression was one of genuine, uncomfortable humility. "Mom," he whispered, a voice I hadn't heard since he was a small boy asking forgiveness for a broken vase. "You're right. We made a horrible mistake. We disrespected you in the worst possible way. We should never have assumed we could use your farm without asking." I remained silent, allowing the sincerity to settle. I had heard apologies before, always deployed when he needed something. "And what would you do differently, Jeremy, if I were to grant you another chance?" I challenged him directly. "We will pay you a monthly rent for the use of the property on weekends," he said quickly. $1,000 a month. "We will consult you before making any plans involving your farm, and we will treat you with the respect you deserve as our mother and as the rightful owner of this house. $1,000 a month, prior consultation, and respect as the owner." Everything I had longed for suddenly materialized under the pressure of acute desperation. "How much monthly rent did you say?" I asked, raising a skeptical eyebrow merely for effect. $1,000, Mom, he repeated, sweat beading on his forehead. "Plus, we'd cover all maintenance expenses. Landscaping, utilities, everything they use when they're here." Tiffany, still tearful, rose and knelt again, spreading her white gown across the porch boards like a flag of surrender. "Evelyn, please. I swear we will never disrespect you again. You will be treated like the queen of this house, exactly as you deserve." It was a powerful, symbolic image. The daughter-in-law who had treated me like a cleaner for 5 years, kneeling at my feet, begging for mercy on her wedding day. The validation was overwhelming, but I knew that promises made in moments of crisis rarely survive the aftermath. "Get up, Tiffany," I said, reaching out to gently pull her to her feet. "You don't need to kneel. You just need to respect me. Does that mean you're going to help us?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. I looked out at the scene, the professionals completing their event, the 200 humiliated guests waiting for a solution, my son and his fiancée finally understanding the true value of my property. I had the power. I decided the next move. Father Michael turned to me, his eyes full of anticipation. "What does your heart say, Evelyn?" "My heart says many things, Father," I confessed. "It says I love my son and want his happiness. But it also says I am exhausted from being treated like a servant in my own home, and both can be true. The question then," he concluded wisely, "is how you balance love with justice." It was the question of the century, and as I looked out, a completely new idea, one that no one, not even I, had considered, began to form in my mind. An idea so simple, so perfect, it would change everything forever. The revolutionary idea settled in my mind with the satisfying click of a lock finally engaging. I slowly rose from my rocking chair, walking to the edge of the porch. I surveyed the crowd. Jeremy, desperate and crumpled. Tiffany, stained but hopeful. Father Michael, patient and observing. And the 200 confused guests who represented the innocent collateral damage in this domestic war. "You are right," I finally stated, my voice ringing with a strength I hadn't realized I possessed. "There are 200 innocent people here today who deserve to witness a celebration of love, not a family disaster. And it is true, they will have their ceremony," Tiffany gasped, a small, choked sound of relief. "Thank you, Evelyn." "Oh, thank you. I am going to do something better than simply help you," I countered, a slow, deliberate smile touching my lips. "I am going to teach you how to organize an event the right way." I walked over to where Henry Maxwell was discreetly watching the scene unfold, fascinated by the intersection of business and betrayal. "Mr. Maxwell," I said, commanding his attention, "how much time would your clients require to conclude their summit if I offered them a significant incentive to expedite the process?" Henry's eyebrows rose in professional curiosity. "What kind of incentive, Mrs. Reed?" "A 50% discount on their rental fee, immediately reimbursed," I offered, "and an exclusive invitation to remain as special guests and witness a highly unique, improvised society wedding. A corporate event followed by a bespoke family celebration, the kind of versatility that could put Aegis on every magazine cover." Henry's face instantly lit up with the thrill of the deal. He saw the viral potential, the PR value. Mrs. Reed, that is an extraordinary incentive. With that, I can guarantee my clients will be done and their equipment cleared by 4:30 p.m. 4:30 p.m. The sun would be low, casting a golden, forgiving light across the sapphire fields. I turned back to Jeremy and Tiffany, who were still struggling to comprehend my strategic pivot. "Here is my proposal," I announced, the authority in my voice settling the entire yard into silence. "The religious ceremony will take place here on my farm after 4:30 p.m. "Thank you, Mom." "Thank you," Jeremy shouted, lunging forward, but I raised a hand, stopping him short. "I am not finished. The ceremony will proceed, but under my conditions with my rules, and conducted precisely in the manner I deem appropriate." The air thickened again, heavy with suspense. They knew the relief was conditional. "What are your conditions, Mom?" Jeremy asked, the gratitude in his voice mixed with profound apprehension. "First condition, effective immediately and perpetually. Any event you wish to hold on my property must be consulted with me at least 1 full month in advance. A written request, not a casual mention." They nodded quickly. This was manageable. "Second condition, you will commence paying the agreed-upon $1,000 per month rental fee for weekend use, plus covering all associated maintenance expenses as promised." Again, they agreed. This was merely financial. "Third condition, during the ceremony today and henceforth, I will be publicly recognized and honored as the owner and hostess of this property. No longer the farm manager or the help." A small wave of relief washed over their faces. This was acceptable pride. "And the fourth condition," I continued, leveling my gaze directly at them, watching the hope drain away as quickly as water from a sieve. "After the ceremony, during the toast, all 200 guests will know the complete and unvarnished story of how this wedding came to be." Tiffany's hand flew to her mouth. Jeremy's complexion turned an ashen white. "The complete story? What do you mean, Mom?" Tiffany whispered, her voice barely audible. "I mean that during the official toast, I will explain exactly how 200 invitations were sent out without consulting the property owner, how a complete wedding was planned without my knowledge, and how the entire event was nearly canceled because no one bothered to ask for my permission." The look of unmitigated horror on their faces was the culmination of 5 years of swallowed dignity. They understood this was not a financial penalty. This was the ultimate public humiliation before their friends, family, and Tiffany's influential European relatives. "Mom, you can't do this to us," Jeremy pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. "Tiffany's family. They'll think we're utterly disrespectful. And weren't you?" I asked, my voice deadly simple. "Weren't you disrespectful by commandeering my property without consent? Am I not the one who should feel humiliated for being treated like a housekeeper in my own home?" Father Michael cleared his throat gently, stepping in. "Evelyn, I understand your moral necessity, but public humiliation can inflict permanent damage on family bonds." "Father, with all due respect," I countered, meeting his gaze with unyielding clarity. "Disrespect toward parents also inflicts permanent damage on family bonds. The difference is my humiliation has been private for 5 years. Theirs will be public for 5 minutes. My logic was devastating and unassailable." Father Michael slowly nodded, acknowledging the hard truth of my position. "What if we accept all your conditions?" Tiffany asked, her voice thick with defeat. "Including the public toast?" They exchanged a long, agonizing glance, the silent communication of a couple calculating the cost of their pride against the dream of their wedding day. "Is there no way to negotiate the toast, Mom?" Jeremy tried one last time, desperation hanging heavy in the air. "We'll double the rent. We'll sign any legal document. Just please spare us the public speech." "No," I replied, the words sharp and final. "You will accept all my conditions, or you will find another venue for your ceremony. Effective immediately." The silence that followed my final ultimatum was so profound, it seemed to steal the very air from the sapphire lavender farm. The 200 confused guests, though unaware of the specific demands, sensed the climax of the family drama unfolding before them. Finally, Tiffany looked at Jeremy, her eyes red but resolute. She swallowed hard, the last vestiges of her spoiled entitlement giving way to the cold reality of consequence. "We accept all your conditions, Evelyn. All of them, including the toast." Jeremy, pale and defeated, nodded slowly. "Okay, Mom, we accept." In that moment, a profound feeling washed over me. Not malicious triumph, but an immense sense of poetic justice. This wasn't cruel revenge. It was the natural, inescapable consequence of their choices, presented in a way that ensured the lesson would be indelible. "Perfect," I stated, nodding once. "Mr. Maxwell, please proceed with your clients. Father Michael, the ceremony is scheduled for 5 p.m. Jeremy, you and Tiffany must now go inform your 200 guests that the wedding will take place, but with a modified schedule." The machinery of organization sprang to life, energized by the clear authoritative command. Henry Maxwell rushed off to execute his PR masterstroke, briefing his clients on the unique opportunity. Father Michael, with the seasoned adaptability of a seasoned priest, began planning the truncated impromptu ceremony. Jeremy and Tiffany, humbled and focused, finally had a genuine task: calming the agitated crowd. I watched from the porch as the farm transformed. By 4:30 p.m., the executives had departed, most of them staying behind as fascinated impromptu guests, eager to witness the climax of the human drama they had inadvertently fueled. The altar was hastily but beautifully set up under the colossal magnolia tree, the one with the dense dark leaves that provided a contrast to Tiffany's white gown. The corporate chairs were pushed together with the few wedding chairs that had made it onto the property, creating an intimate, functional configuration. At 5:15 p.m., the ceremony began. Tiffany, despite the stress and the slight smudge of dirt on her train, looked stunning under the low, golden light of the late afternoon sun. Jeremy had managed to smooth his hair and straighten his tie, regaining a semblance of the sophisticated groom he was meant to be. As Father Michael's voice resonated, strong, clear, and solemn, I found my focus drifting from the vows of eternal love to the speech I was mentally preparing. This was the moment I had waited 40 years for, the moment I would finally, publicly, define my own dignity. When Father Michael pronounced the final words, "You may kiss as husband and wife," the applause was deafening, a roar of relief and triumph. 200 people celebrating not just a couple, but the fact that they hadn't wasted an entire Saturday. Henry Maxwell, ever the professional, approached me with a microphone and a glass of sparkling cider. "Mrs. Reed, it is time for the toast, hostess of the evening." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the moment of absolute truth. I took the wireless microphone, my hand steady, and walked to the center of the terrace where all eyes could find me. The crowd settled into complete, expectant silence. They anticipated the usual sentimental clichés: joy, tears, advice on compromise. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and projecting confidence. "I am Evelyn Reed, Jeremy's mother, and the proud owner of this beautiful sapphire lavender farm where we are gathered today." The applause was warm and immediate. So far, so normal. "I want to thank you all for traveling, some of you thousands of miles, to join us on this very special day," I continued, a deliberate pause creating space for my next pivotal sentence. "Though I must confess, I found out the wedding would be held here in the exact same way most of you did, by receiving an invitation." A confused murmur swept through the guests. They exchanged glances, unsure if this was a nervous joke. "You see," I explained, letting the silence fall again. "My son and my new daughter-in-law sent out 200 invitations bearing my home address, without ever consulting me, the property owner, if I agreed to host this massive event." The murmur died, replaced by a shocking absolute silence. Every single eye rotated between the two mortified newlyweds, whose faces were scarlet with shame, and me, their poised, unyielding accuser. "I discovered this planned takeover on Tuesday morning, when the florist called to coordinate the decor," I continued with devastating serenity. Imagine my surprise to learn that my private property, the sanctuary I built with my own hands, had been committed to an event I knew nothing about. I paused, allowing the weight of the revelation to sink in. I then moved to the heart of my story. I spent 40 years working as an interior designer to buy this farm. 40 years saving every dollar, dreaming of a place where I could retire with dignity. And for the last 5 years, I have been treated as a live-in housekeeper on my own property. The silence was profound. No one expected this raw public unveiling of family drama, but they were captivated. When I learned what had happened, I made a decision. I legally rented my farm to a corporate summit on the exact day of the wedding to teach my son and daughter-in-law a critical, non-negotiable lesson. This property has an owner, and that owner is me. Several older guests began nodding in deep approval. The story of the corporate invasion now made perfect, stunning sense. But ultimately, family love is stronger than hurt pride. And although it took this extreme measure to gain the respect I deserve, here we are celebrating Jeremy and Tiffany's love, in my house, on my terms, with my rules. The applause that erupted was entirely different. It was an applause of admiration, recognition, and profound respect for a woman who had finally and powerfully defended her own dignity. Raising my glass high, I concluded the most unforgettable wedding toast in the history of the Reed family. So I toast to the bride and groom. May they begin their marriage today by understanding that respect for their parents is not optional, that consideration for others is fundamental, and that mothers, too, have rights, feelings, and absolute ownership over their own lives. The resulting ovation was thunderous, an acknowledgement not just of the marriage, but of the life lesson masterfully imparted. The corporate executives who had remained as witnesses clapped with professional enthusiasm. The older family members nodded gravely, while even the younger friends seemed to grasp that they had just witnessed an extraordinary, real-life drama, a scene more gripping than any reality show. Jeremy approached me through the crowd, his eyes glistening with fresh tears. These were not tears of anger or shame, but of true, raw comprehension. He pulled me into a tight embrace, uncaring that the entire crowd was watching. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so deeply sorry it took us this long to finally understand." Tiffany followed, her beautiful white dress stained with the dirt of her afternoon panic. Her tears of humiliation had now mixed with tears of overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you for saving the wedding, Evelyn. Despite everything, we will never forget this lesson. Never." Their public apology, delivered through their body language and whispered words, sealed the deal. The conditions had been met. The truth had been spoken. The dignity had been reclaimed. The rest of the reception, a late-night, intimate celebration under the glow of improvised fairy lights strung across the lavender fields, was magical. The unexpected mix of impeccably dressed corporate professionals and emotional wedding guests created an electric, unique atmosphere. The executives mingled perfectly with Tiffany's international relatives, exchanging business cards and discussing the unparalleled ambiance of the farm. Guests continually sought me out, not just to congratulate the couple, but to express their profound admiration for me. "What a brave woman you are, Evelyn," whispered one of Tiffany's chic Parisian aunts, drawing me close. "I wish more mothers had your conviction. You defined your boundaries perfectly." A longtime acquaintance of Jeremy's father commented, "You handled that with the calm of a CEO, Evelyn. Pure class and unassailable logic." The most significant validation, however, came from Henry Maxwell. He found me just as his crew was packing up the last of the high-tech equipment, around 10 p.m. "Mrs. Reed," he said, extending his hand, his eyes shining with respect. "What I witnessed today, the perfect execution of a crisis, the ultimate display of integrity, and the sheer elegance of this property, is exactly what our most demanding clients seek. I want to offer you an exclusive contract. Your farm and your personality are a brand we need." He offered a partnership that would transform my sapphire lavender farm from a personal sanctuary into an exclusive, high-end event venue. The financial proposal was staggering, promising $5,000 to $7,000 per weekend event. It was the financial independence I had never dared to dream of, offered as a direct result of my stand for dignity. I accepted immediately. When the last car finally pulled away and the quiet returned to the valley, I sat on my porch, holding a single, crisp glass of sparkling cider. I looked up at the vast expanse of the Sonoma night sky, where the stars seemed brighter than usual. In my hand, I held the signed, exclusive contract from Aegis Events. But more importantly, I had two things that could not be purchased: the absolute respect of my family and the profound certainty that I would never again allow anyone, not even my own son, to treat me as less than I was. The self-sacrificing mother, the compliant grandmother, the family housekeeper. That woman was gone, buried under the weight of her own redeemed dignity. Evelyn Reed was now the owner of her own destiny, the absolute sovereign of her own house, and the author of her own story. The chapter of suffering in silence was over. The beautiful chapter, the one where I finally respected myself enough to demand that others respect me too, had just begun. At 68 years old, I had learned the most critical lesson of all. Love without respect is a counterfeit emotion. And sometimes the greatest gift a mother can give her children is the painful, unavoidable truth. 6 months have swept past the sapphire lavender farm since the infamous wedding. That day, marked by chaos and culminating in cathartic public truth, has become a whispered legend in both high society circles and my local community. But for me, the change is not legendary. It is tangible, profound, and deeply peaceful. Every morning, I wake up in my sanctuary with a feeling I had never experienced before: the absolute and complete control over my own existence. The oppressive weight of anticipated servitude is gone, replaced by the light burden of professional planning. The event business has flourished beyond my wildest, most ambitious dreams. Henry Maxwell and Aegis Corporate Events have been the perfect partners. The farm, under their exclusive management for high-end bookings, is now the most sought-after venue in the region for intimate, elegant weddings and boutique corporate retreats. The money is substantial, offering a financial freedom I never achieved during my 4 decades as a designer. Every weekend, the farm generates between $3,000 and $5,000 in revenue. This new income stream has given me an independence that is not just comforting, but utterly transformative. I no longer worry about the future. I have built a fortress of security with the sheer force of my will, but the most exquisite, beautiful change is the respect. Jeremy and Tiffany have kept their promise with an almost religious fervor. Every month, the $1,000 rental fee is deposited promptly and automatically. They have never, not once, appeared at the farm unannounced or without consultation. When they want to use the property for a family gathering, Jeremy calls weeks in advance, using the precise, professional language of a client requesting a booking. "Mom," he called me one Thursday afternoon. The tone respectful, almost deferential. "Could you please check your calendar? We were hoping to celebrate Tiffany's 30th birthday at the farm next Saturday, if that is convenient for you." Only if the date is available, of course, if that is convenient for you. If the date is available. Those are the words I had waited 5 years to hear. Words that acknowledge my time, my ownership, and my schedule as valuable and finite. The change in their demeanor when they visit is even more profound. I am no longer the farm manager who disappears into the kitchen. I am the respected hostess, the absolute matriarch, who sits at the head of the antique walnut dining table. I remember the first family dinner we hosted after the wedding. I prepared my famous French-style chicken, something I genuinely enjoy cooking. When I stood up to clear the dishes, Tiffany gently placed her hand on my arm. "Evelyn, please. You worked enough preparing this delicious meal. We will handle the cleanup. You sit and enjoy your glass of wine." It was a small, simple gesture, but it felt like a seismic shift in my universe. It was as if I had been transported to a parallel world where I was finally treated as the revered figure I had always deserved to be. The grandchildren, of course, still visit me. Tiffany never carried out her earlier desperate threat to keep them away. And now, my relationship with them has deepened. They now see me not as the quiet, submissive grandmother who constantly gave in, but as the powerful, elegant matriarch who commanded and received respect. The whole town knows my story. For months, I was the subject of conversation at the local farmers' market, at my book club, and yes, even at the quaint little church I attend. Other older women sought me out, sharing their own painful stories of adult children taking advantage. "Evelyn, how did you find the courage to stand up for yourself?" my friend Irene asked me, her eyes full of yearning. My answer is always the same, stripped of drama, rooted in truth. "Irene, I didn't find courage. I built it. Day by day, humiliation by humiliation, until I finally reached the point where I decided I deserved something fundamentally better. It was not a sudden burst of heroism. It was the slow, painful realization that my self-respect was non-negotiable. Ironically, my newfound assertiveness and financial success have made me quite the eligible widow. I have received 3 very formal, very polite marriage proposals from local gentlemen who were impressed by my strong character and my prosperous business. I thank them graciously, but explain that at 68, I have finally learned the exquisite joy of being truly happy with myself. And I wouldn't trade that self-sufficiency for anything. The Sapphire Lavender Farm has become more than a venue. It is a symbol. Young women come to me for advice on setting boundaries with their own families. Mothers tell me how they used my story, the Evelyn Reed protocol, to teach their adult children the cost of entitlement. Even Father Michael occasionally references my case in his sermons on honoring one's parents. The private battle for my dignity has become a public masterclass in self-worth. The partnership with Henry Maxwell and Aegis Events is thriving, but it is the meticulous execution of our new family rules that provides the deeper gratification. I now look at Jeremy and Tiffany, not with the old raw hurt, but with a complex understanding of their growth. They are learning that respect is a language of actions, not just words. For instance, when they host a party now, they don't just ask if the date is free. They send a brief, organized proposal detailing the number of guests, the exact areas of the farm they intend to use, and a clear plan for cleanup and security. They treat their mother's home with the formality they would reserve for a 5-star hotel, and that formality is profoundly healing. The most transformative change for me personally is the freedom from anticipation. For 5 years, every time the phone rang, I braced myself for a demand, an imposition, or an invasion of my privacy. Now when they call, I know the conversation will be one of consultation, not command. This psychological shift, from defensive to secure, is perhaps worth more than all the thousands of dollars I now earn. This internal revolution has allowed me to delve deeper into the things I truly love. The lavender fields, once merely a backdrop for other people's parties, are now the center of my creative life. I have started distilling my own essential oils, creating custom blends, and am planning a small, exclusive online shop. This is the art, the quiet creativity I had pushed aside for decades in favor of being useful to my children. Now I am useful to myself. Tiffany, surprisingly, has begun to show a genuine curiosity about the farm's operations. After the initial shock wore off, the pride she once took in flaunting her wealth has been channeled into a sincere appreciation for the effort that goes into the property. She sometimes volunteers to help me with the harvest, asking thoughtful questions about soil quality and distillation techniques. This is a connection built not on need or obligation, but on mutual respect for the work involved. One afternoon, about 5 months after the wedding, Tiffany came over alone. We were sitting on the porch, sipping iced tea, a scene that would have been unimaginable a year ago. "Evelyn," she started, twisting the rim of her glass, "I need to tell you something. Before the wedding crisis, I honestly believed that because you were retired and loved to cook, you were essentially available to serve. I didn't see you as a business owner or even an individual with a separate life. I saw you as the resource." Her honesty was a painful mirror reflecting my past mistakes. I saw you allowing Jeremy to take advantage of you for so long that I thought it was the family dynamic. And I just stepped into that dynamic. She looked up, her eyes clear. "You didn't just teach Jeremy a lesson that day. You taught me one too. You taught me that women, especially older women, do not lose their right to personal space and dignity just because they're family. Thank you for showing me how to set a boundary. It was a profound apology, deeper than the one delivered in the desperation of her wedding day. It proved that the public confrontation, the painful truth, had not destroyed the family bond. It had purified it, stripping away the toxic layer of entitlement. I placed my hand gently over hers. Tiffany, the greatest act of love is sometimes the most difficult one. And you are proving yourself worthy of my son and this family by choosing respect over pride. This conversation solidified my victory. It wasn't just about the financial rent. It was about the emotional rent they were now willing to pay. Genuine self-reflection and transformation. I realize now that the problem was rooted not only in their entitlement, but in my own inability to articulate my worth. By constantly giving, by fearing conflict, I had tacitly endorsed their behavior. The wedding day wasn't just about them learning to respect me. It was about me learning to respect myself enough to demand it. The old me would have collapsed under the pressure of the wedding chaos, sacrificed my contract, and let the ceremony proceed to avoid a scene. The new me stood firm, embraced the chaos as a necessary tool, and used the public stage to redefine my entire role in the family. This self-actualization at 68 years old is the greatest triumph of my life. The impact of the Evelyn Reed Protocol has rippled far beyond our immediate family. My farm has become a quiet destination for women seeking not just a venue, but inspiration. They don't come for my essential oils. They come for my story. Hilda, how did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Irene would ask me every time we met. My answer is always the same. I didn't find the courage. I built it day by day every time I decided I deserved something better. This realization that courage is built, not found, has become my mantra. It wasn't a moment of sudden bravery. It was years of accumulated humiliations until I finally said, enough. The local community has embraced me. I was recently invited to speak at a women's business luncheon, an event I would have only attended in my past life to cater the flowers or manage the seating. Now, I was the keynote speaker, discussing the importance of establishing and maintaining boundaries in later life, particularly when dealing with adult children. My talk, titled The Owner's Manual, Reclaiming Your Dignity at Any Age, was intensely personal. I recounted the corporate event, the 200 invitations, and the ultimate test of wills. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. Dozens of women, mothers, grandmothers, successful businesswomen, came up to me afterwards, tears in their eyes. One woman, about my age, confided, "My son treats my vacation home exactly the way yours treated the farm. I've been dreading Thanksgiving because I know he's bringing 20 people. I was going to cook for all of them. After hearing you, I just sent him a text. I told him, 'You are welcome, but you must consult me on the guest list and the meal will be potluck. I'm the guest, not the caterer.' It was terrifying, Evelyn, but I did it. That single text message, born from my public stand, was more valuable than any money I've earned. It was the legacy of empowerment. My partnership with Henry Maxwell continues to flourish. We are now booked solid for the next year. Henry, who is a brilliant strategist, often tells the story of the wedding as a lesson in negotiation and integrity to his top clients. He credits my firmness, my unwavering commitment to the contract, as the reason his clients trust me implicitly. I am no longer just Evelyn Reed, the farm owner. I am Evelyn Reed, the businesswoman with integrity. The most unexpected benefit has been the profound improvement in my relationship with Jeremy. By forcing him to confront his entitlement, I gave him the opportunity to grow into a more empathetic, responsible man. His apologies now feel genuine because they are backed by months of consistent, respectful behavior. He no longer calls me mom and immediately follows it with a request. He calls to genuinely ask about my day, about the lavender harvest, or about the latest business partnership with Aegis. We talk about real things now, separated from the toxic dynamic of need and compliance. The distance created by my boundary has paradoxically allowed us to become closer emotionally. I realized that the wedding was never really about the ceremony or the farm. It was about the refoundational moment of our family structure. We had to tear down the old, unhealthy foundation of codependency and silent resentment before we could build something strong and honest in its place. Even Father Michael, when he sees me at church, gives me a knowing, gentle smile. He has incorporated the story into his sermons on honoring your parents, explaining that sometimes the greatest honor is establishing the clear lines that prevent mutual destruction. Every night, I look out at my lavender fields, no longer seeing the 4 decades of sweat and sacrifice, but the promise of a future I control. I whisper a small prayer of thanks, not for the money, not for the respect, but for the courage to write the end of my own story, instead of letting others write it for me. The stillness of the sapphire lavender farm at night is the sound of peace, a peace hard-won and deeply cherished. I often sit on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, thinking about the woman I was and the woman I have become. The transition from compliance to sovereignty was the hardest journey of my life. The old Evelyn was defined by her giving. She found her self-worth in being needed, in the endless act of service. When Jeremy and Tiffany treated me like a housekeeper, I was hurt, but part of me accepted that role because it felt familiar. It was easier to be the martyr than to be the leader. The new Evelyn understands that true worth is inherent and does not require constant validation through sacrifice. My dignity is not a favor to be granted by others. It is a declaration I make to the world. The fact that the wedding disaster had to unfold publicly was crucial. It forced them to face the consequences of their actions not just privately, where an apology could be superficial, but in front of their entire social circle. Public humiliation was the catalyst for private transformation. It raised the stakes high enough that they had no choice but to rebuild the relationship based on sincerity. I look at the $1,000 Jeremy pays me each month. It is a symbol, a concrete acknowledgement of the economic value of my space and my labor. It is a monthly reminder that they are guests, not conquerors. And that single $1,000 transaction has done more for our relationship than 20 years of free cooking ever could. This whole ordeal has taught me about the difference between love and attachment. I loved Jeremy, but I was attached to the idea of being his selfless, ever-available mother, which allowed him to remain emotionally immature. By demanding boundaries, I forced him into maturity. My ultimate act of love was not giving him the wedding, but giving him the truth. I think back to Father Michael's question, how do you balance love with justice? My answer now is clear: justice is love. It is not loving to allow a child to continue behaving disrespectfully. True love requires accountability. That day, I chose tough love, and it saved my relationship with my son, transforming it from a toxic codependency into a relationship between 2 respectful adults. I remember Tiffany's desperate plea on the porch. "We'll treat you like the queen of this house." I told her then, "You don't need to kneel. You just need to respect me." The queen analogy was tempting, but I didn't want the title of a figurehead. I wanted the substance of a sovereign. A sovereign makes the rules. A queen often just wears the crown. I chose to be the sovereign. My life now is rich with genuine connection. My relationship with my grandchildren is deeper because they see me as a powerful, principled figure. They spend quality time with me, not just unsupervised time. They see me tending to my business, negotiating contracts, and leading my life with purpose. They are learning by observation that a woman's value does not diminish with age. I have found a kinship with Henry Maxwell that is purely professional, but incredibly rewarding. He sees me as a peer, a savvy business owner. We discuss logistics, branding, and long-term strategy. This intellectual engagement is a sharp, wonderful contrast to the domestic banality that once defined my existence. I have also taken up painting again, setting up an easel in the corner of the barn that used to store Jeremy's party supplies. I paint the lavender fields in different lights, trying to capture the subtle sapphire hue just before sunset. It is an act of reclamation, transforming the physical space into a vessel for my artistic expression. The lesson for every woman, every mother, every grandmother, every friend is this: it is never too late to start respecting yourself. You may be 68, 75, or 90. The clock doesn't matter. What matters is the moment you decide that your dignity is the most valuable asset you own, and that you will defend it against all invaders, even the ones you raised. My life, 6 months post-crisis, is a tapestry woven with threads of gratitude, peace, and prosperity. The Sapphire Lavender Farm is fully booked, the business is thriving, and the harmony with my family is real, built on the rock-solid foundation of mutual respect. But the true end of the story is not found in the past. It is found in the unwritten future. I look forward now, not backward. I am developing my own legacy, a legacy defined by independence and principled living. My next major project is building a small, elegant retreat center on the far side of the farm, dedicated to helping women in their 60s and 70s transition into self-sovereignty. It will be called the Evelyn Reed Sanctuary, a place where women can learn to set boundaries, discover their neglected talents, and redefine their relationships with their adult children. I plan to invite women like Irene to come and share their stories, turning our shared pain into collective strength. This will be my ultimate philanthropic endeavor, transforming the painful humiliation I endured into a beacon of empowerment for others. Jeremy and Tiffany are now clients, but they are also collaborators. They understand that their success is intertwined with mine. Their relationship, tested by fire, is stronger. Tiffany, once a symbol of entitlement, is now learning the value of earned success, and Jeremy is learning the value of empathy and filial duty. They are better people because of the confrontation. I am often asked if I regret the drama, if I regret causing my son pain on his wedding day. My answer is a resounding no. I regret the 5 years I wasted in silence. I regret the 40 years I spent prioritizing everyone else's comfort over my own integrity. But I will never regret the day I chose to be my own advocate. The pain was necessary for the purification of our bond. I have come to believe that the greatest gift a mother can give her children is not inherited wealth or endless service, but a clear, robust model of self-respect. By standing up to them, I taught them how to stand up for themselves. I taught them that true love is demanding, that it requires honesty, and that it accepts nothing less than full acknowledgement of one's worth. The era of the silent, suffering matriarch is over. The era of the sovereign mother has begun. My final thoughts on this viral, dramatic episode are for you, the viewer, the mother, the woman who may be feeling undervalued in your own home. Do not wait for a major crisis, a wedding, a broken contract, to demand your dignity. Your life, your home, your time, these are your sacred assets. Value them fiercely. Establish your boundaries not with anger, but with the cold, clear logic of a CEO managing her most prized investment. If you recognize any part of my past life in your present situation, know this: it is never too late to start respecting yourself. Do not beg for respect. Demand it. Do not hide your worth. Declare it. Do not be the manager. Be the owner. My story is my victory, and it is a map for your own. Take the lesson, take the courage, and begin writing the most beautiful chapter of your life today, the chapter where you finally live on your own terms. My son's wedding was a devastating betrayal, but it became my greatest triumph. It was the moment I transformed 40 years of silence into a $1,000 a month mandate for respect. We proved that love without boundaries is merely control in disguise. Now, my farm is booked for a year, and my self-worth is priceless. If you are ready to stop being the family's free resource and start being the respected owner of your own life, then join our community. Hit that like button, share this story with the woman who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Evelyn Reed's Sanctuary for more lessons on reclaiming your dignity and finding true joy in your golden years. Your revolution starts now. My greatest victory was not a new fortune or company, but reclaiming my self-respect. My son's marriage was a devastating betrayal, but it became the moment I turned 40 years of silence into a declaration of my self-worth. Priced at $1,000 per month in rent. The most valuable lesson: love without boundaries is merely disguised control. I chose justice over blind sacrifice. Today, I am no longer the housekeeper. I am the supreme sovereign of my own life. My story is a blueprint for you. If you are ready to leave the role of free resource and become the respected owner of your life, join the Evelyn Reed Sanctuary community today. Never accept less than you deserve. Hit subscribe and start your own revolution.